Yeah, that's a. I mean, in terms of I wouldn't say I wouldn't say Palestine is more complicated than what's going on in this country. I think it's just, as you said, it's a different kind of colonialism, and the whole question of citizenship. Again, this is not just your work, obviously, Nick, but all the works of Native American scholars. The whole idea of how citizenship was used to basically to break up tribal or native sovereignty and to sort of facilitate a colonial conquest in this country. That's one thing. That's one story, but. What you're doing is you're pointing to, again, a difference when people talk about the situation in Palestine, the situation in America being the same. It's not the same in the sense, as you say, here you can be a citizen and you can be a citizen with equal rights, and you're not necessarily white. It's not defined anymore, at least as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'm wrong. As a white, I don't think it ever was defined as a white. I mean, it was, of course, in reality with slavery, but it's a country which can absorb people as equal, at least theoretically, nominally, not in practice, but nominally and legally as equal citizens. In Israel, of course, Israel is a state which is not the state of its citizens, and the Israeli state has made this very clear, abundantly clear. It's the state of the Jewish people. So you could have certain rights. The Palestinian minority there have certain rights as citizens. Of course, they're subjected. They're second-class, third-class citizens. They're discriminated in the most extraordinary ways, especially if we put it in American terms. That would be totally unacceptable in this country. But they have certain rights. They can vote. They can do these kinds of things. Whereas the Palestinians in Gaza, of course, have no rights. I mean, they're subjected to a merciless sort of siege and bombardment and killing and dehumanization. The Palestinians of East Jerusalem have residency cards, but they get stripped. At the flimsiest excuse, they take them away. They're not allowed to build, and so, hence the whole thing of Sheikh Jarrah as well is part of this context of trying to remove the Palestinians completely. And in the West Bank, of course, they have, again, they're not as we know from the Human Rights Watch report, from B'Tselem, and of course from the Palestinian experience. They don't have rights either. They have the rights of international law, but they don't have rights in the face of the Israeli state. And so how do you unbake the cake? Well, it seems to me the obvious point, and what the Israelis, when I say the Israelis, I mean there are, of course, one has to mention, there are some fantastic Israelis who understand what's right and what's wrong. There are scholars like Ilan Pape. There are others who genuinely are in solidarity with the Palestinians, and so one has to always admit this and say this. But there are people who understand that to unbake the Israeli cake means you have to get to a point where equality, equal rights, equal humanity counts. And the problem with the Zionist project is that equality means that you have to fundamentally change the makeup of this sort of ideology of this state. You cannot have a Jewish state and treat people who are not Jewish equally. It's just not going to happen. And so that's the problem that they have. So to unbake the cake means to struggle for genuine freedom and liberation and equality for all peoples, Jewish, Muslim, and Christian, and atheists in that land. That's really the struggle ahead. And I think that's why it's such a powerful, the Palestinian story is so powerful, because it's so basic. All Palestinians want is equality and freedom. And all that's missing right now is honestly, thinking in the future, is a leadership, whether it comes from the below or however it comes. It's not for me to say, but a leadership that's able to articulate that vision that encompasses Israelis and Palestinians in a struggle for equality, for genuine equality. I think that's where it's going. That's where the struggle is going, just by virtue of Israeli power, because Israel has made this entire region one place, there's one sovereign.